The complete history of heroin. The drug that was supposed to save the world. In 1874, inside a small London laboratory, a chemist boiled morphine and produced a new compound, one he believed was the future of safe medicine. A miracle painkiller, a non-addictive alternative to morphine, a gift to humanity. Less than 20 years later, the German pharmaceutical giant Bayer would give this substance a brand name that would define an era. That name was heroin. What started as a scientific breakthrough turned into one of the deadliest, most addictive drugs in human history. It shaped global wars, fueled criminal empires, destabilized nations, and created modern epidemics still haunting the world today. This is the complete, unfiltered history of heroin, a story of science, commerce, war, addiction, crime, and human tragedy. A story that begins not on the streets, but in the laboratory. A new drug is born, 1874. The story of heroin begins with a man named C.R. Alder Wright, a British chemist working at St. Mary's Hospital in London. Wright had been experimenting with ways to modify morphine, hoping to reduce addiction while maintaining pain relief. In 1874, he boiled morphine with acetic anhydride. The result was diacetylmorphine. He tested the compound on animals but didn't pursue it further. It sat forgotten in scientific literature for nearly 2 decades, but Wright had unknowingly created what would become one of the most powerful drugs on Earth. Years passed. Then Germany took notice. Bayer finds a miracle drug, 1897 to 1898. In the late 1890s, a young German chemist at Bayer, Felix Hoffmann, revisited Wright's work. Hoffmann had just synthesized aspirin when Bayer instructed him to explore opiate derivatives. He recreated diacetylmorphine. Bayer was stunned by its effects. It suppressed coughing, it relieved pain, it induced euphoria. Early tests showed less addiction potential. Bayer made a catastrophic mistake. They believed heroin was non-addictive. In 1898, Bayer launched the drug worldwide under the brand name Heroin, from the German word heroisch, meaning heroic or strong. Their advertisements promised the safest painkiller known, a perfect cure for morphine addiction, ideal medicine for children with coughs. Pharmacies stocked heroin next to aspirin. Doctors prescribed it for almost everything: colds, pneumonia, surgery recovery, even shyness. Sales exploded, and addiction followed. The first heroin epidemic, 1900 to 1920. Almost immediately, patients began experiencing powerful cravings. Doctors noticed that heroin seemed more addictive than morphine, not less. By the early 1900s, American newspapers reported rising numbers of heroin addicts. Europe saw growing dependency in industrial cities. Heroin appeared in smoking parlors, opium dens, pharmacies, doctors' offices, and sold openly through mail-order catalogs. Heroin addiction rose so fast that governments began to panic. The U.S. steps in 1914. The United States passed the Harrison Narcotics Tax Act, making heroin prescription only and restricting opiate distribution. But that wasn't enough. By 1924, the U.S. completely banned heroin, declaring it dangerous and unacceptable for medical use. Other countries soon followed. But banning heroin did not destroy it. It simply changed who controlled it. The medical industry lost heroin. The black market claimed it. The birth of the heroin underworld, 1920s to 1940s. With heroin outlawed, new criminal networks emerged to supply demand. In the early 20th century, heroin production and distribution became dominated by Chinese triads, European trafficking groups, American organized crime families. Heroin flowed from opium plantations in Asia to secret labs in Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Marseille. Shanghai, the heroin capital. By the 1920s and 1930s, Shanghai was infamous for dozens of heroin laboratories, powerful criminal gangs, foreign intelligence agencies secretly involved corrupt officials allowing the trade to flourish. Heroin moved through international shipping routes into the United States and Europe. Organized crime grew stronger than ever. Heroin was no longer a pharmaceutical product. It was a commodity of the underworld. World War II disrupts the trade. World War II changed everything. Global trade routes collapsed. Ports shut down. Shipping was monitored. Heroin production declined dramatically during the war. But the break didn't last long. As soon as the war ended, a new power entered the heroin world, one that would dominate the mid-20th century. The French Connection, 1940s to 1970s. After World War II, French intelligence and Corsican mafia groups formed a powerful heroin distribution network centered in Marseille. This network, famously called the French Connection, smuggled heroin from opium fields in Turkey, laboratories in Marseille, distribution rings in New York and Montreal. By the 1950s and 60s, nearly 80% of the heroin in America came through the French Connection. Its operations were so large that the CIA, FBI, and Interpol launched multi-year investigations to dismantle it. In 1972, a massive raid shut down most of the Marseille labs. But the fall of the French Connection created a vacuum, and that vacuum was filled by a new region, a region that would change the global heroin trade forever. The Golden Triangle, 1960s to 1990s, where Southeast Asia meets Myanmar, Burma, Laos, and Thailand, a lush mountainous region became the world's most prolific opium source. The area is known as the Golden Triangle. This region was controlled by warlords, ethnic militias, anti-communist armies, corrupt regional officials, and, according to many historical sources, intelligence agencies sometimes funded friendly factions who financed themselves through opium trafficking. The Golden Triangle produced thousands of tons of raw opium, hundreds of tons of heroin, international drug routes through Thailand and Hong Kong. By the 1970s and 80s, it was the heroin capital of the world. But another region was quietly rising, and it would soon eclipse them. Afghanistan, the opium powerhouse, 1980s to present. Afghanistan's heroin dominance came from war, poverty, and geography. Soviet-Afghan War, 1979 to 1989. During the war, farmers shifted from wheat to opium because opium earns far more money, requires less water stores, easily trades quickly, attracts foreign buyers. As conflict spread, opium became Afghanistan's most profitable crop. Warlords taxed opium to fund armies. The Mujahideen used opium money to purchase weapons. By the 1990s, Afghanistan overtook the Golden Triangle as the largest opium producer on Earth. Taliban era, 1996 to 2001. The Taliban initially banned opium production in 2000, causing a temporary global shortage. But after the US invasion in 2001, opium production soared again. Today, Afghanistan supplies 80 to 90% of the world's heroin. This is one of the largest narcotic economies in human history. Heroin hits the Western world hard, 1960s to 2000s. By the 1960s and 70s, heroin became intertwined with youth culture and social rebellion. Vietnam War. Thousands of American soldiers stationed in Southeast Asia encountered high-purity heroin. Many became addicted. Returning veterans brought demand back with them. 1970s and 80s urban epidemics. Heroin devastated inner-city communities, creating deep cycles of addiction, homelessness, crime, family collapse. Heroin became associated with needles, poverty, overdose, despair, but the drug wasn't done evolving. Big Pharma's role, the opioid tunnel, 1990s to 2000s. In the 1990s, pharmaceutical companies launched powerful new opioids, including OxyContin. These pills contained high doses of oxycodone, a semi-synthetic opioid chemically similar to heroin. Pharmaceutical sales reps and marketing campaigns pushed OxyContin aggressively, claiming it was non-addictive, safe for long-term use, a clean alternative to heroin. The same lie Bayer once told. As millions became addicted to prescription opioids and regulations tightened, users searched for something cheaper. They found heroin. Heroin use surged across North America in the 2000s because it cost less than pills. A terrifying cycle formed. Prescription opioids, dependency. Pill shortage, transition to heroin overdose crisis, but an even deadlier substance entered the market, one that makes heroin look weak. The fentanyl era, 2010s to 2025. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. It is easy to produce, transport, and disguise. Cartels began mixing fentanyl with heroin to increase potency and profit. Users had no idea they were consuming it. Overdose deaths exploded. Fentanyl has now overtaken heroin as the leading cause of opioid deaths worldwide. But heroin remains widely used, especially across Asia, Eastern Europe, and Africa. Heroin shaped the opioid pipeline that fentanyl now dominates. How heroin is made. Heroin production begins with opium poppies. Steps. Farmers cut green poppy pods. Milky latex oozes out. Raw opium. Opium is dried and packed. It is dissolved, filtered, and chemically converted into morphine. Morphine base is shipped to secret labs. Chemists convert morphine into heroin using acetic anhydride. Heroin is dried, pressed, cut, and packaged. Pure heroin is white. Most street heroin is diluted with caffeine, burned sugar, starch, fentanyl, sedatives, powders, household chemicals. These additives make heroin far more dangerous. Heroin and the global economy. Heroin is not only a drug, it is a billion-dollar commodity. Money from heroin supports warlords, terrorist groups, corrupt officials, criminal syndicates, multinational trafficking networks, money laundering operations, offshore bank accounts, fake import-export businesses. The heroin economy may involve farmers, brokers, lab chemists, transporters, corrupt police, cartels, international banks. The global heroin market is valued at $55 to $70 billion per year. The human cost. Heroin takes an enormous toll. Overdose deaths, HIV and hepatitis through needle sharing, homelessness, family breakdown, mental health crisis, violence and crime, lost workforce productivity, overburdened healthcare systems. Heroin is not just a drug, it is a societal wound. Heroin today, 2025. Today's heroin landscape looks like this. Afghanistan remains the largest producer. Mexico produces large quantities for the US market. Myanmar revived production after years of conflict. Synthetic opioids now dominate the market. Heroin purity is decreasing while fentanyl contamination increases. Law enforcement seizures are at record levels, yet supply remains steady. Heroin story continues. but the drug itself is now overshadowed by synthetic successors. Still, the damage heroin has done over the last 150 years is unmatched by any other drug except perhaps fentanyl. The legacy of heroin began as a scientific invention, a miracle medicine, a symbol of progress. Instead, it became a global epidemic, a tool of criminal empires, a cause of international conflict, a multi-billion-dollar illegal industry, a source of immeasurable human suffering, a pathway to the synthetic opioid crisis, a tragic lesson in unintended consequences, from the laboratory to the battlefield, from hospitals to alleyways, from pharmaceutical companies to warlords. Heroin has touched every corner of human civilization. Its story is a warning about the dangers of science without caution, medicine without ethics, and commerce without conscience. Heroin promised to save humanity. Instead, it became one of the deadliest creations in history. And its legacy still shapes the world today.